Language 806, Lesson 1, Dependent and Independent Clauses, and Compound Complex Sentences. So, we know what an independent clause is. An independent clause can stand alone. A dependent clause depends on the rest of the sentence. Let's say, when the volcano erupted. That's a dependent clause, because it depends on the rest of the sentence to make it make sense. What do you have to say about the volcano when it erupted? So that depends on the other part of the sentence, but it has to have a subject and a verb. Now, an independent clause, as I said, was something that can stand alone. The dog ran around the yard. So we know what those are. Let's, on number 1, bracket the dependent clauses and underline the independent. So here I have number 1 and 2. Bracket the dependent. What part depends on the rest of the sentence for it to make sense? The explorer Vitus Bering and his crew, who were Russians, were the first Europeans in Alaska. What part depends? We know that they have to start with a relative pronoun or a subordinating conjunction. So it'd be who were Russians. That is your dependent clause. And then we have the rest is independent. There you go. Number 1 is done. Number 2. When the Russians came, there were several groups of native tribes living there. What is our dependent clause? When the Russians came. That starts with a not a relative pronoun, subordinating conjunction. When. So, when they came, and then the rest would be our independent clause. There we go. So, I believe we understand how to do this fairly well. So, first of all, compound complex sentences. Let's go to the next part. Compound complex sentences, they have a dependent clause, at least one dependent clause, and then they have 2 or more independent clauses. So there's a compound where you have to have an and, you have to have a conjunction, or a semicolon. And then you have to have at least one set of parentheses, one dependent clause. So if we have a sentence where we have an independent clause, a coordinating conjunction, and then another independent clause, that's a compound. Now if we have a dependent clause with an independent clause with a coordinating conjunction and another independent clause, that is what we call compound complex. CD CX is the abbreviation we'll be using for it. So, 2 independent clauses connected, it's a compound. 2 independent clauses with a dependent clause connected is a compound complex sentence. So let's go over to these ones. Go ahead and do number 3 on your own. Bracket any dependent clauses, underline the independent clauses, and then circle the words or punctuation marks that connect the two. So, Deanna searched for the missing papers, but she couldn't find them because her desk was so disorganized. Let's find our dependent clauses first. Dependent. This time we have a subordinating conjunction that starts our dependent clause, which is an adverb clause, right here, because her desk was so disorganized. And then we have because these are supposed to be compound complex sentences, we need to have at least 2 independent clauses. So where's our connector? Right here. But is our connector. And there we go. Number 5, Johann Sebastian Bach, who was orphaned at the age of 9, wrote over 300 pieces of music. Most of them were religious compositions. Now, where is our adjective clause, our dependent clause? Who was orphaned at age 9? Correct. And where's our connector? It says that it can be a word or punctuation mark, and in this one we have a punctuation mark that connects it right here, the semicolon. And then the rest needs to be underlined. So just make sure you do not underline the semicolon. That one needs to be circled. So, with this, we will go on to number 7 and 8. Go ahead and do the rest of these ones on your own. I guess there's only one, number 6. Then we're going to go to number 7 and 8. Bracket the dependent clauses, underline the independent clauses, and then identify if the sentence is a simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, or a compound complex. Simple sentences is just one independent clause. A compound sentence is 2 independent clauses connected. A complex sentence is 1 or more independent and 1 no. It's one independent and 1 dependent. And then compound complex is 1 or more independent and 1 or more dependent. So this one, I also going to write what the identity of the sentence over here. So first, bracket the dependent clauses. The feathers of the ptarmigan, which lives in Arctic regions, change from brown to white during the winter. Our dependent clause is right here, which lives in Arctic regions. And we do not have a connector in this sentence, so we underline the rest, which gives us one dependent, 1 independent, which gives us a complex sentence. Complex because we have a dependent clause in there. The next one. We had a hard frost the other night. and the leaves are falling fast. We don't have a dependent clause, so then either it is a simple or compound. Do we have a connector? Yes, right here. So we have dependent, independent, independent, and a connector, which gives us a compound. So go ahead and do the rest of the new part on your own and the rest of the We Remember section as well. So if you have any questions, let me know. Go ahead and finish the rest of the lesson.